The flagship IIeX event, the IIeX North America 2020 conference, was held from September 9th to 11th this year. This annual conference always features a speaking list of representatives from the biggest brands, pitches from new and emerging startups, and opportunities to meet and network with leading professionals from all over the market research industry. This year's conference, held virtually because of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, was no different. IIeX North America 2020 was an amazing opportunity for market researchers, marketers, and insights professionals to learn from one another, connect, and exchange ideas. This year's conference also featured the presentation of the first ever annual Market Research Podcast Award from Little Bird Marketing in partnership with GreenBook, for which Stories of Market Research was nominated. When you consider all that was going on at the conference, and all the innovations that were being discussed amongst the MR community, it was absolutely no surprise that Insightrix was there. Hello, my name is Duncan McGregor, the Marketing and Communications Coordinator at Insightrix Research in Saskatoon, Canada, and your podcast host. In this episode of our podcast series, we're offering a recap of our experiences at IIeX North America 2020, from the awesome virtual sessions we attended to the fun networking events we were a part of, and even some of what we learned along the way. To talk about our experiences at the conference and the events that were part of it, Priscilla Mckinney, the mama bird at Little Bird Marketing, returns to the podcast. Priscilla was a big part of IIeX North America 2020, emceeing and participating in many of the sessions and events at the conference, as well as organizing the Women in Research Happy Hour and creating the annual Market Research Podcast Award, and emceeing the ceremony itself. So of course we jumped with the opportunity to chat with her about her time at IIeX. In this episode we also speak with Insightrix data scientist Efoma Adagi and Insightrix research associate Brandon Bellows to get a recap of their experiences at the conference and the sessions they attended, and find out about some of the subjects and topics they heard about. Insights and innovations, networking and connecting, and knowledge building with folks from the industry we all love. We're offering a recap of all that and more in this episode of Stories of Market Research, the Insightrix podcast. First, we're joined by Priscilla Mckinney, the mama bird at Little Bird Marketing, to get a recap of her experiences at this year's IIeX North America. Hi Priscilla, thanks so much for coming back on the podcast, especially at what must be a really busy time after last week's IIeX North America conference. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, so it's always my honor to be on your podcast, and I just love the camaraderie that we have. And IIeX is a crazy busy time, but as you know, it's worth it.
Yeah, and that's just what I wanted to chat with you about, actually, how much it is worth you. How was your experience at this year's conference?
Well, luckily for me, I get asked to help with some of the things at the conference, which I just have to tell people. When people ask you to introduce other people and speak and take small little pieces and parts of a show, definitely say yes, because you meet so many more people and it makes the whole process so much more enjoyable. So, yeah, I got to introduce some people. I got to give away a Market Research Podcast of the Year award. And I also got to sponsor a Women in Research event, which is near and dear to my heart, and we just had a lot of fun. Everybody needs a little bit of fun along with the work.
Yeah, tell me about it. Actually, a bunch of folks from Insightrix, including myself, our data scientist, and a bunch of our senior management and researchers were there this year, and we really had a blast. Having it virtual was really quite a hoot.
Yeah, I love the travel. I love going to Austin.
Mm-hmm.
You know me, I do travel all over the world during the year, speaking. But having it virtual, it's different. And we have to kind of embrace what is different about it. But it still takes work. When we come home from being there in person, we're exhausted. And when I come home from the day of being there virtually, I'm exhausted. It just really is no different. But there can be pieces that are really enlivening. Yeah,
and it's a different vibe, too. Like you're saying, there's a lot of opportunity to connect with folks that you might not have had the opportunity to do. So the networking I actually found really, really quite easy. I was going to ask you about the Women in Research Happy Hour that you organized. I thought it was awesome. I attended. It was really great. So it's some amazing breakout sessions afterward. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, Women in Research is free to join all over the world, and it's just womeninresearch.org, and there are a lot of men involved as well, but it is there to completely bring more women to the table, more diverse voices, and I'm a part of the WIRE Exec Committee. We do fork over money. At this point in our career, we should be able to pay for this, but if anybody wants to join, there is never any cost to join, and there's never any cost for the events. So I'm happy to sponsor that and just bring women together and men who are supporting women in market research, and we network. We did something fun at the conference. We just did an actual trivia game, and we gave away just tons of prizes just because I feel like, with COVID-19, I just feel like everybody needed a little bit of a break. We do get that when we're in person. We get that cocktail hour. We get maybe some events, some parties, and things like that. And when you're virtual, you're not getting that kind of connection. So I thought it was really important. I could kill two birds with one stone, although here at Little Bird Marketing, we don't believe in killing birds. But we could have some fun and network, but we could also then be putting money toward a program that really does matter in this industry.
Yeah, I found that too. It was really the best opportunity, that one event, I think, to get that feeling of camaraderie that you get at a conference and actually, like you're saying, have a happy hour, maybe have a toast, raise a couple of glasses and rub shoulders with other folks in the community. So I really enjoyed it. I really did. And honestly,
I'm glad you enjoyed it. But if you get involved in the chat as you did, you can see that people are funny and they're inviting in the chat. And it may seem a little bit weird to try it out at the beginning, but if you just get in the chat and start talking with people, it starts coming very naturally.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. That chat feature in the virtual conference, for some folks that might not have the gift of gab that you and I have, having the opportunity to actually approach folks in that setting, I noticed a lot more people reaching out.
Yeah. That, and also for those people who don't maybe feel comfortable with starting that kind of a conversation, the 100%. Reality is being on social media at the time while you were in the conference is a fantastic way to start really meaningful conversations. All you need to do is give someone a pat on the back, give them some props or some kudos for something amazing they said in the actual, event, in the session. And, you can do a nice little graphic and say, oh, this was great what so-and-so said. But I am not joking. If you actually listen with an ear to be calling out some great things that are happening and you broadcast that on your social media, you really can make a lot of positive connections, and it's fun. It's fun giving other people kudos for great conversation starters.
100%. Now, there's something that happened at the conference that was pretty near and dear to my heart, the first annual Market Research Podcast Awards that you were a very big part of. I wanted to ask you, I had a really great time attending and getting to rub elbows with other members of the now very much growing market research podcast community. How'd it go on your end as the creator of the award and the event MC?
Well, we loved it. And, my team kept the winners a secret from me because I just didn't want to know. And I wanted to be able to announce the winners. And obviously, everybody's always asking me, how's that going? But I love my podcast and I love using it to promote other people. And I really wanted to do two things. I wanted to acknowledge, first of all, that it's hard to make a podcast. People should stop and really appreciate it. Sometimes I think it gets taken for granted in an industry. The people who take the time to curate the content, make the it's expensive and it's time consuming. And I wanted to, number one, just give kudos to those people and give them the recognition that they should be getting all through the year. But secondly, I wanted to turn more people onto listening to the podcast. And so I felt like if we ponied up and gave this award away, all it would do would help the entire industry. And of course, we're not eligible for the award. We're not a market research podcast. So it's just nice for us to be able to find something that we can do to support the industry from a little bit on the outside. I wouldn't say we're necessarily on the outside. Maybe we're on the front row with popcorn to the market research industry. And, we want to support it. And I do really believe that the more podcasts that we have that are meaningful, the better conversations we're going to have out there, the quicker we're going to share ideas, collaborate, and collaboration really ends up in really great innovation.
Well, I think it's awards like that, too, that really elevate the position of podcasts in the marketing mix. So I really got to thank you for that as a podcaster as well.
Well, good. And I'm so glad that you got nominated. And I do think it is, I think it is an award to get nominated. But I guarantee you, as our team comes around and really gives the social, yeah, there was one winner and two runners up, but I got to tell you, we're going to spend just as much time promoting the work that everybody who was nominated did, because that's the whole point, is to get people to find something new. Maybe they don't have to listen to a podcast every day, but if they could change their behavior a little bit and once a week find something new to listen to, it absolutely will do a really big piece of cross-pollination of ideas in this industry.
100%. If you're pretty much guaranteed to learn something almost every one of these podcasts, not just ours either.
Exactly.
Like I'm not just tooting our own horn. The winners and the nominees, as well as everybody else who was nominated, it was just a really good gang of really heavy hitting, really good hardcore podcasts, and to be even in the same room was quite a hoot. I should ask you: is there anything coming up on the horizon for yourself, or little bit marketing? Any speaking or at conferences coming up?
Yeah, this is crazy busy season.
I bet.
And for me, yes, I'm not traveling, but all of those conferences once again went online. So I guess two big things on the horizon I've got in the next couple of weeks are just crazy busy with shows. But Ask Your Target Market, which is AYTM.com. They are doing a Insider virtual conference. That's September 23rd and 24th. And I'll be speaking to that group actually about something very different that I don't speak about very often, and that is about personal branding. And in the middle of, who we are as insights professionals or marketing professionals, we're always pushing brands and, pushing projects. But really, we also, as professionals, need to be thinking about how are we taking care of our personal brand. So I'm going to be talking about that there. But near and dear my heart, coming up this December 10th, we're going to go virtual, of course, but it's Insights Marketing Day. And it is specifically for small to medium insights marketing firms, for them to stop, take a deep breath, and get some ideas about how to market themselves. I feel like sometimes it's a case of the cobbler's kids that have no shoes. You have all these market research firms who do amazing research and help with marketing for all these other firms, but they don't stop and take care of their own marketing. And so we put a whole day out where they can hear about what's the latest, how can they get that competitive edge, how can they actually promote themselves as a company. And that's coming up in December. We do that in combination, in collaboration with GreenBook, and also with Keena's Mustard from across the pond. So it will be December 10th. You can find everything on Little Bird Marketing on our events. I'm sure it'll populate here very soon. But that's coming up in December, and it is absolutely the place to be virtually this December.
Yeah, can't agree more. Can't agree more. In fact, knowing that it's virtual, I'll be there with bells on. You wouldn't be able to keep me away. I should also mention, too, you've got the podcast of your own, Ponderings from the Perch, the Little Bird Marketing podcast. Folks can find that on the Little Bird Marketing website, correct? As well as most podcast players?
Oh, yeah, we've got them across the board. Whatever it is that tickles your fancy with podcasts, we're located on there. But you're right, it's Ponderings from the Perch, and we talk everything about marketing. Also, we have a lot of interviews from big heavy hitters inside market research, but also in the actual content marketing world. And I like to give tips and tricks, and I also like to try and help people just maybe change their mindset just a little bit about how they might have been attacking a wicked challenge they're facing.
Yeah, it's definitely saved on my favorites. I don't miss an episode. Thanks so much for coming on at a very, very busy time for you. I really appreciate it. And thanks so much for the awards and everything.
For you, Duncan. Absolutely. You're absolutely welcome. And, kudos to you and your team for all the work that goes into the podcast. I hope that that you got a little bit of being a sung hero instead of always being an unsung hero.
That's awesome. Next, we're talking to Insightrix data scientist Efoma Adagi about her time at IIeX North America 2020. Hi, Efoma. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Duncan.
Well, it's really great to have you on, especially to talk about the IIeX North America 2020 conference. How was it? We were all attending this year, but I'm curious to hear about your thoughts.
I think it was a good place to learn about the latest research and methodologies that are being used in research. and to also connect with other people in similar roles around the world. So it was really good for me.
Did you get to check out a lot of the sessions?
2 sessions. I attended 2 sessions. One was on Friday, and that was storytelling with data. And and the other one was death to sentiment analysis. That was on Thursday.
Both of those sound really interesting. Can you tell me a little bit about the first one?
Yeah, so the one about storytelling with data was held by Jason Elliger. He's a consumer insights and strategy person. So the idea is that when you're trying to produce a report for a client, there are many ways that you can tell a story using the data that you've collected from the study that was conducted. And, the way you tell the story really matters depending on the type of data. He mentioned 2 types of 2 paths. One was the narrative and the other was discovery. In narrative, he said that you start with a problem and you kind of systematically go through how it was solved. And, with the discovery, you kind of take the client along your discovery journey, and you kind of help them to get that aha moment. So it's more of creating timelines and, this happened at this point, and then we did this. So for the first type of narrative, he said that is mostly better with surveys or large data sets.
Mm-hmm.
And with the discovery, it's typically easy to do that with when you have multiple sources of data.
I'm really glad to hear a lot of people are looking into storytelling reporting too, because nothing worse than a data dump, right, Efoma?
Yeah, and another thing I found interesting was that a lot of the comments he made on how to do the actual reporting were things that we had talked about in the office with Sade. He talked about using templates, and I know that when we were having our sessions at work, Sade always mentioned how you could use templates, and she gave us, several links on where we could find templates that we could use. He also talked about how we can leverage white spaces in our report. And I know Shadi mentioned that because I went back to check my notes. Things like setting the templates for the fonts, the colors. These are all things that he mentioned. And, I felt glad because these are things that we're already doing at Insightrix. So we are, using the latest methods that are being, most people are using. So I kind of felt glad, knowing that that's what we're doing, already. He also talked about having a focus, how you can create charts, and then kind of direct the reader's attention to just one particular place on that chart. How that different ways that can be done. Also, how we could use words when we're describing things that are happening in a chart and not use too many words or too few words. So all in all, it kind of aligns with what we're doing currently at Insightrix and the kind of things that Shadi has been pushing for us to do over the past few months.
I should mention, if this is the first episode you've ever listened to of the podcast, or if you're just jumping in, Sharday Torgerson is our creative lead and digital strategist here, and she leads the pack on our, I guess you could say, data visualization. She consults a lot on how we prepare reporting. If you're looking to ever check out an episode where Sharday is actually talking about a lot of this stuff, check out the episode Market Research and Data Visualization. It's a really good one, and it's a great introduction to Sharday as well. Getting back to the conference, though, real quick, Efoma, the other one that you checked out, the other session, Death to Sentiment Analysis, I got to pick your brain a lot about that because I'm kind of a say that 5 times fast. Sentiment analysis, I do it a lot in my work. So please tell me a little bit more about that because that sounds like one I should have checked out myself.
So the session was chaired by Francisco, he is the co-founder of company called Pulsar Platform. And what he was trying to say, from my understanding, is that doing simple sentiment analysis, for example, saying this was positive or negative, if this comment is positive or negative, is not enough to give insight into what a person is doing or what they're trying to say. That what should be done instead is what he calls vertical AI. And that's using machine learning to classify text according to existing frameworks, or maybe specific to, say, a case study or an industry. I'll give an example. So, for example, if you want to find out more on maybe Twitter text or chats on Twitter or social media, simply saying that these comments are positive or these comments are negative might not give more insight into the people that are having the discussion or what the discussion is about. But if you go further and create like a dimension or create like personality AI, for example, and personality AI in this case could be like a dimension for measuring personality, which could include things like sincerity, excitement, competence, sophistication, and then use these dimensions to measure the different comments. Then you get a better sense of who the personalities of the people chatting, for example. Instead of just saying, oh, it's positive or negative, you could see things like, oh, we have 70% sincerity and 20% excitement or some other dimensions. So this is what, he was trying to say, that positive or negative is not enough, but building frameworks or building other vertical AIs surrounding existing dimensions will give you more revelation into what's being said, by the data.
That's so cool to hear that this is something you could automate. It's pretty cool, as well as the fact that you're able to pull so much more data out of it.
Yes, you can. I mean, and there's no limit to what you can do. You could have a like a personality AI. You could have like leadership AI. As long as you can define dimensions of leadership, you can have leadership AI. You could have maybe cloud AI, for example. As long as you can define dimensions of a thing, then you could have a vertical AI. And it's also good because it's machine learning trained. So what you need to do is to build your model and train it accordingly based on the different dimensions. For example, the personality AI, you could have, and you want to use sincerity, excitement, competence to measure personality. You just need to find or create sentences that describe excitement, sincerity, or competence, or in your list of the sentences you're trying to determine what personality they have. For example, you could manually go through, in building your model, you could go through some of the sentences to classify them, and then train the model using those classified sentences, and then any new set of sentences you bring in, the model automatically classifies them into the different dimensions. So it's using machine learning as it should be used, and it takes a lot of guesswork out of you trying to understand or trying to classify sentences.
That's so cool. Great question. The conference is also a really cool event to get a hold and meet new folks in the industry and maybe do some networking. Is that something you had a chance to do?
Oh yes, I did. I participated in different, in the chat session, and then I also reached out to some of the participants outside the conference itself and connected with some of them on LinkedIn too.
That's so awesome because, these things are a great chance to learn, but they're also a really great opportunity to let your hair down and meet some new people and actually exchange some ideas. So that's really cool.
I agree. Yes, I agree. I think it's very important to attend such conferences and participate and, build a network of other professionals. Yeah.
I really want to thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing your experiences with us. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much, Duncan.
finally, to round out episode 21, we're speaking with Brandon Bellows, Insightrix Research Associate, to hear about his experiences at IIeX and some of the sessions he attended. Hi, Brandon. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Duncan. Thanks for having me.
You were just recently at the IIeX North America 2020 conference with a lot of other members of our staff. What were your general impressions?
Yeah, I was. It was really good. So obviously it was online this year, which made it a lot more accessible, and that was really nice. And I think the first thing that stood out to me is really how organized the entire thing was. I guess that's really important, obviously, when you are online. Sort of in the early days of COVID, there were a bunch of training sessions and seminars and those sorts of things that were being moved online. And it was good, but you could tell that people weren't used to doing it or organizing it or getting it all set up. So there was a lot of bearing with people. One thing that really stood out to me about this conference was how it was set up very nicely. There was a good flow. There was good communication, even when there were hiccups. There's always a few things like that, isn't there? But you sort of knew exactly what was coming, all of the sessions. In every session, everything was laid out really well. So that made it, I guess, really easy to attend. And afterwards, I've listened to a recording here of the session, and all that was laid out very well.
Yeah, I found it was really cool for that, actually. After the conference ended, they sure did make it pretty easy to check out some of the recorded sessions, didn't they?
Yeah, for sure. Usually there's quite a wait there, isn't there? But yeah, they just sent out an email here, and it was pretty quick. They said most of the sessions are ready already, and some more will be coming online soon.
Did you get a chance to check out many sessions?
So I had a chance to check out 2 sessions.
Excellent.
There was one that it worked. I was able to go live in person, and then, like I mentioned, I checked out a recording just here recently.
Which ones did you check out? Which one did you check out live?
So the one I checked out live was a session on storytelling. So from the context I was watching that, I'm involved with a lot of the report writing. So that was really helpful. I really wanted to pick out sort of those sessions that are maybe a bit less strategic. That's less of my role here. And I'm more involved in kind of the day-to-day dealing with clients and working on the deliverables. So I wanted things that impacted those. So I guess, like I said, the first one focused on that storytelling aspect there. So that was good and getting some takeaways there. The second was a session on some software to do causal research.
So that session you attended on causal research, that sounded really interesting. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, it definitely was really interesting. So, like I said, I'm involved on a lot of the numbers side here. So there's quite a lot of math lying behind some of causal research here. But I guess a really high level. First of all, in the session, they introduced a bit what causal research is, because it's not something that's really at the forefront of a lot of the analysis we do, at least in most market research companies. And the reason for that is because it's very computationally intensive. So it's all about looking at relationships between different either attributes or variables or different, I guess, entities or objects in your data set. So if you have 2 variables, there might be one relationship there. But if you go to 3 variables, well, then for each object, there's relationships with 2 others. So there's 6 to look at. And if you add a third, or you go to, I guess, a 4th object, it increases even more from that because each object has 3 relationships to look at. So when you get up to 30 plus attributes or variables, which isn't uncommon for studies, that's trillions of relationships. So computers could get tied up taking weeks to run those results. So what the session was largely showcasing was a new platform that's being developed to do this type of research, and to do it very quickly. It takes sort of under 15 minutes for most studies is what they were showing. So it was really interesting to look at that area.
That sounds really, really cool. You also attended that session about storytelling and reporting. I know our data scientist, Efoma, actually attended that one as well. We talked to her a little bit about it, but I'd love to hear your take as a researcher.
Yeah, for sure. It was fun to see Efoma there because I saw her in the chat as we were going through it. Yeah, and that was a very interesting session to go to because for my whole time here, there has been an emphasis within Insightrix in trying to take sort of a storytelling approach when writing reports. And sometimes you go to different training, a lot of it is maybe similar. But one of the cool things going to this one was to see them mention a few things that we do very regularly in our report writing. And I guess some sort of confirmation of those things we're doing. Some of the things I picked out there is they talk about how using templates is great once you have something set up. Reuse that, especially if someone else is seeing it. So we do things similar to that. Some of the different chart styling, I guess, ideas that they gave, they're right in line with what we do. And then also beyond that, even sort of the styles of presentations that you give, instead of just reusing the full report when you're presenting it to someone, you can really go beyond that. You can create two versions and be mindful to how it's a bit of a different environment there. So it was cool to see those things. There were definitely also some other, I guess, learnings and takeaways that I think I can apply going forward. I think one of my main takeaways was the speaker talked a lot about focus, and he gave a really good, I guess, analogy that if you're reading a book or something, you can think about how the author has something in mind for where he wants to take the audience, or he or she wants to take the audience, I suppose. And then through that, it really lies out what they include in the story then. So it's much more of a narrative approach. And so I've definitely been thinking a lot about that since then. I know a lot of the time when writing a report, sort of the classic default we're programmed with in our minds is that in a report, it's all about getting all the data or information into whatever format you're presenting it. And you don't think about how it's laid out maybe naturally, because it's all about the content. So I was challenged by some of the things that the presenter talked about there. One of the lines he said is, think about where you want your audience to have that aha moment and then take them there. Don't just sort of wait for it to magically appear or hope that it will, but be intentional. So something I've even been thinking about early this week since I've watched the session, I was working on one report where, I guess on the slide, if you can visualize this, we had a line graph doing a trend on the left side of the screen. And that was sort of the detailed view of the data. And then on the right, we had a table with some summary values. In the session, they talked a bit about how the natural reading progression in the West is you read left to right, isn't it? So even in that, I was thinking about, okay, what I really want the person who reads this slide to look at is to focus on these summary values. So all I did on the slide was I flipped what side each thing was on. What I wanted the person to really pay attention to, I put on the left side, because there I'm thinking, this is the first thing they're going to look at. This is where I want their focus to go. Let me try to structure the report around that. And then put some of the more detailed things over on the right side. So if they want to get into that later, they can do that, sort of having the flow that I was hoping for. So it's a bit of a different way to think about things. I definitely had some great takeaways there, I think.
That sounds really awesome. Well, it sounds like you totally had a pretty good time attending the conference.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
Definitely a really high-quality conference, and it was great to have that opportunity to do it.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your experience there. It was really great.
Oh, anytime.
And there you have it. we'd like to thank Priscilla Mckinney for taking the time out of a very busy schedule to come and share her experiences with us. If you'd like to know more about Little Bird Marketing, or the marketing podcast they produce, Ponderings from the Perch, check out their website at littlebirdmarketing.com. We'd also like to thank Efoma Adagi and Brandon Bellows for coming on the podcast to recap their time at the conference, as well as some of what they learned in the sessions they attended. And of course, we'd like to thank you, our awesome listeners. We really appreciate all your support. If you'd like to keep up to date with all the news and happenings at Insightrix Research, you can follow us on social media like LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Just search Insightrix Research to follow us. Have you ever heard anything on stories of market research that got you thinking? Ever had an idea for a topic for a show? Or maybe you know that ideal guest you think would have a lot to share? Just let us know. Send us an email at podcast@insightrix.com, and you can let us know about what you think about past topics and episodes, suggest amazing guests, and even just say hello. We'd love to hear from you. You can also support Stories of Market Research directly. All you've got to do is head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and a positive review. The more you rate and review Stories of Market Research, the higher it gets ranked by iTunes, which means it gets more visibility, which also means the podcast can be found by more folks like yourself, awesome folks with an interest in market research. Or maybe you're in a forum or on social media and you see someone who's looking for a podcast recommendation. Let them know about Stories of Market Research and tell them why you listen. Tired of listening the same way for every episode? Why not mix it up? You can find Stories of Market Research everywhere you get your podcasts, like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. Just click the subscribe button and make sure you never miss an episode. You can also always listen to every episode of Stories of Market Research ad-free on our episode archive on the Insightrix website. Just head over to insightrix.com/podcast to check it out. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back in another couple of weeks with another episode of Stories of Market Research, the Insightrix podcast.